Hello. I am here with ice cream. And I know the setting's a little different, but I'm doing this from my bed because I want to. Yeah, this video might be a little different. Or the exact same. Or the exact fucking same. Oh, or there's no differences other than the setting, of course. But today I want to talk about another idea that I had kind of like in my mind that was just like, is that my dog? We're learning about resource guarding, and see, I just took that right from his mouth, and that was amazing, Tangle. You good boy. Okay, yeah, I wanted to talk about something called resource guarding, and no, for real. Today, while my ice cream melts, I want to talk to you about creativity, as I always do, and kind of like often people who feel that they are not creative believe that that's just like an innate personality trait, or the way that your brain works, or the way that we like operate in the world is different. And to me, it's not. And I think this is kind of how I view it. Creativity takes heart. So there's vulnerability. I've talked about that in previous videos. It takes like, this like kind of constant like exposure to situations that scare us. And then like all hearts, it's a muscle. And I kind of want to talk about this. So creativity takes heart, and heart is a muscle. Let me talk about why it takes heart. First and foremost, creativity is vital. Okay. You die without your heart. Creativity, imagination, all these things, joy, they bring meaning to our lives. They bring enrichment to our lives. They make our lives better. They make our lives happier. They make our lives fun and exciting. And yeah, so they're vital. And also hearts experience a cyclical pattern. So we have pulses, we have contractions. It's necessary for the enjoyment of our lives to have a heart, just like creativity is. It needs not only balance, but like careful attention, right? Like it's not just like, oh, you can't just say like, fuck your heart health. It's important. And your creative health is just as important. And it's also part of your brain, which is not a muscle, but an organ. Hearts are also organs, but also muscles. So the question is, and this isn't like a new thought, okay? First and foremost, like I want to say, I'm not like the first person in the world that said creativity is a muscle. In fact, you can find 4,000 fucking articles about this. And the reason why I know this is because I use the internet. And I saw a lot of people think like creativity is like a muscle. And I think what better way than to repeat what everyone else has said, but to also talk about like, yeah, like I'll fucking pin that shit down. Cliches are cliches for a reason, guys. Like there is a reason that it's like be yourself. When people are like, be yourself, authenticity is the best. There's a reason these cliches exist. It's because they're true, and they're pretty consistently true. And I remember being pissed when I found out that be yourself was actually pretty good fucking advice. Okay, let me just say this. Creativity is like a muscle. Why do we say that? Why do we lean into the cliche? Not all cliches are helpful. Most of them are to some degree. There's something to take from everything. But creativity, what are we taking from that? Why does creativity matter as a muscle? Why does it matter to view it this way? And the reason being is, first and foremost, you can't say you're not creative. You just got to strengthen the muscle. And that's about consistent and varied use. And that is also about the kind of how a muscle, if you don't use it, it ain't getting stronger. It can weaken if you stop using it. And also you can overuse it. So think about your body, think about all things you can learn from your body, these kind of metaphors and how these kind of relay. If creativity is a muscle, it can be strengthened through use. It can be weakened by not being used, and it can be overused. So when we're approaching creativity, then if we view it like a muscle, we also know that there's balance necessary. We know that careful attention is necessary, intentional practice, and we also know that some days they're not going to be tip-top shape. Some days I wake up and my back hurts. Today is one of them. This is fucking 26, guys. Like, actually, don't matter. But yeah, people can exercise their muscles, but they can also just like recognize that like some days there's variance in their performance. Like creativity isn't always just like available. I remember I used to be a gym rat. Not the best time in my life, but I used to be a bit of a gym rat. I would go like 5-6 times a week if I could. And there were some days where I was like, what do you mean I'm lifting 10, 15, 20 pounds less? And I just like can't lift it. And the reason being was just like variance in performance. I was tired. There was stiffness. I didn't stretch. I didn't eat well, or I did eat well, or I'm dehydrated, or I'm not dehydrated. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you just wake up and it doesn't fucking go the way that you want it to. And when we start to like give ourselves the space for that variance, if we start to treat creativity like a muscle, then we can recognize that performance will vary from day to day, and we might not have control over that. Actually, we won't. There's no like ifs, buts, and but yes. Okay, so let's talk about muscles. Okay, let's talk about muscles. They're strengthened by use. Okay, you got to do your exercises. Start let's continue this metaphor, shall we? We're talking about exercise regimens. Okay, strengthened by use. If you are starting to exercise, you don't have to start with the heavy lifting, right? You can start with stretches, body weight exercises. These are great. These are great things to do. Exercises are so good for you. Your body loves them, even if your brain doesn't love them, even if you're tired. But body weight exercises are great. I actually only do body weight exercises at this point in my life. That is where you can start. You don't have to start heavy. You don't have to go crazy. And you can do these things and you can grow these things. And we'll talk about that. Predominantly, if we talk about this, we can start small. No one's going to be like, hey, welcome to the creativity gym. Go deadlift 350 pounds of pure creative ideas now. That's super unrealistic and you're gonna pee yourself, like a lot of people who deadlift 350 pounds. Well, if you're starting with kind of like this like body weight mentality, let's start with kind of these basics. Let's start with where we're at. We don't need any extra materials. We don't need any of these extra things. We are just going to start with right where we are. That's great practice, honestly, in general, because then you're not dropping a ton of money on materials. You're not putting an insane amount of pressure on what you're doing. And you're also just like really letting things happen the way that they're meant to unfold. I don't want to talk too much about weakening when we don't use it because I don't fully subscribe to the idea that like stepping away for long periods of time is going to like make you less creative. I've gone through prolonged periods in my life where I frankly have not been creative. I've been in situations where life has necessitated my attention elsewhere. You know, if I was writing exams in university, I wasn't fucking like really prioritizing my creativity. I was prioritizing my schooling. And when I jumped back in, it wasn't like, you know, whatever. I don't think that your brain or imagination is punishing you per se for not creating. What I do think happens is we get out of our routine. And I think it can be hard to jump into a habitual creative practice if we've been out of it. So maybe creativity more so as a practice weakens with this use and, you know, kind of distance from these things that you're maybe inclined to do. Like exercise, creativity and any practice requires discipline. You are required to show up and kind of overcome in some ways things that maybe you don't want to overcome. Often, like right now, I'm sleepy girl. I want to film. I told myself I was going to film this video today. I would listen to myself if I had a valid reason, but the reason being I want to eat ice cream and sit in bed. And so I'm compromising with myself and I have ice cream melting and I have my bed and I'm filming. But yeah, it requires consistent practice. And that doesn't mean every single day, every single minute of every single day. That's a very big misconception, especially with social media, by the way. If you're an artist exploring social media, consistency is at your pace. Let's talk about exercise again. Setting a consistent pace is so influential. And that doesn't have to be, again, every day. It can be once a week. It can be once a month. Set the time for yourself and stick to it. Consistency and discipline. In terms of like exercise, it's the same thing. You're not going to do like 6 sit-ups and be like, oh, perfect, washboard abs, perfect. You're going to have to do them a few times. There's going to be a lot of other factors as well that are going to contribute to that. It's not just, you know, I think it can be like I know the exercise metaphor can be difficult because the way the human body reacts to exercise is also very nuanced, but we're using this kind of just like muscle metaphor. So bear with me, guys. But yeah, then when you start to build any habit, like, you know, it becomes memory. Like, for example, if you know, every day before bed, you're like, I'm going to make a little sticky note with one little stick figure on it, and he's going to be doing something different every single day. You're going to start going to bed and start associating going to bed with making your stick figure. And so, you know, we start to build associations. Our brains are only so, you know, whatever. They build neural pathways very consistently. It takes time, of course, but with regular practice, it becomes easier, more effortless. And we also get familiarize ourselves with them. Like, for example, you're going to the gym and you do for the very first time 10 pounds on your arms. And you're like, holy fuck. The next morning you wake up and you're like, my arms are noodles. I'll never do that ever again. Well, okay. Well, now you do it again. You do it the next week. Okay. You know, now after a few weeks, you're like, fuck, okay, wait, now I'm not really feeling it. I'm going to up my weight a little bit. No problem. But now you can contextualize that pain is because you've done these things to kind of like challenge yourself. And that brings us to our, next point. Not only are we contextualizing, but we're also leading to progress. And we maybe feel like, okay, we're going into the creative practice. Every single time I go into this, I have some spurt of doubt. I have some spurt of anxiety. And I can now contextualize that into the creative experience. If I'm feeling self-doubt, if I'm feeling anxiety, it means I'm trying something new. It means I'm learning, which are scary things, but we can also recognize like, okay, fear has its place in the creative process. It does. It's very natural. It's a part of the whole fucking shtick. We know. And by exploring these kind of things, we're able to maintain and improve our creative practice, however that shows up. So yeah, there's like so many different ways that you can continue on this metaphor. It takes heart. It takes this like kind of emotional and mental like contribution. Like you're going to have to put effort in. Here is kind of how. Here's how we're exercising the muscle. Here's how we're taking the heart and we're recognizing the heart as a muscle and we're working on it. Can like consistently engage. Regularly write down your ideas. I always hear, do you remember? Guys, do you remember when shower notepads were a thing? The whole point of the shower notepads is that you were able to like write down an idea the second it came and you're like, eureka moment comes, you write it down. Apparently this is a really great practice. I'm very bad at that. I always go, oh, I'll remember. Never remember. The only times I remember is when I tell myself you're probably not going to remember. And then I do, which is so funny. You can do these things regularly. Write them down. You don't have to engage with it necessarily, but if you have these ideas, you generate these ideas, regularly write them down. They don't have to be good ideas also. Every idea could be bad. Every idea could be good. Engage with all of them. You're also going to want to deal with this kind of like little ache that we do, right? When we first go to exercise, things don't feel amazing. And you're going to have to do some tweaks and you're going to have to try some new things. So that's going to be a big one. You're going to want to seek new experiences. You're going to want to, if you want to experience creativity, you're going to have to seek inspiration. And seeking inspiration means stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's awful, I know, but newness becomes more comfortable over time. And so does like varying your routine. So how do we vary our routine and also talk about routine? Because I've been talking about routine this whole time. How do we have this consistency of creative practice and also variance? And it's the consistency of variance. If you tell yourself you're going to try something new every single day, or you're going to switch things up every single day or whatever, I tell myself I'm going to learn something new every day. And I try to find that. If I feel like I haven't learned anything that day, I got to do some Googling. Got to learn some fun facts. You have to seek things out. You have to seek variance. You have to seek newness. You're going to feel afraid. I'm sorry. You're going to feel afraid. And fear is such a natural part of the process. I wish we were all a little braver. I wish things, maybe not that we were a little braver, but just that we never felt afraid in the first place, but we will. And somehow that's embedded in what we've been tasked with. And you can't be afraid of being hurt. You can't be afraid of failure. You can be afraid of hurt. You can be afraid of failure because you will be afraid of failure and you will be afraid of hurt. You don't have to be stopped by it. You don't have to be limited by it. You don't have to be like, this fear doesn't have to destabilize your goals. It doesn't do any of those things. So not don't, but like it's about allowance. You're going to feel afraid. I feel afraid every day. I wake up and I go, ah! And that's just like, the natural, like, do you guys wake up? Do you guys wake up and you're like, that happens to me every morning. I genuinely wake up in a panic and then I get overstimulated because I'm like, what is happening? Oh my God. I go from like the blissfulness of like zero stimulation and then I'm like, the world comes rushing back in. On the note of sleep, the very last thing that you're going to do is, like all wonderful practices, in engage in balance. We are not going to overload ourselves. Like I said, we're not going to hurt those muscles. We're going to rest. So just as much as we challenge them, just as much as we explore new things, just as much as we do all of these fantastic, awesome, cool things, we're also going to do fantastic, awesome, cool things like sleep and like creative rest, which is like reading, and a little bit less of the like doing and more of the reception. As much as we create, we always want to receive. And a big part of receiving is that restoration. I feel like that can be very hard, especially when your goal is to be more creative, and that kind of can be associated with output. You gotta do both. There's no way around it. I wish there was, but you gotta do both. I'm just gonna close it off by basically saying like creativity is not easy, just like exercising is not easy. Exercising patience, exercising courage, exercising any kind of practice that requires effort is not easy. Engaging in anything in the human world is not easy, and I give you credit and give yourself credit. But yeah, creativity is going to take some heart. It's going to take some courage, and your courage is going to need consistency. And that's how you'll overcome it. And that's how we'll maintain our creative practice. And that's how we'll continue to grow through our creative practice. And I wish I could tell you that you could just do it once and everything would be good. But unfortunately, a lot of things like, follow that It takes time, it takes effort, it takes consistent nurturing. Plant the seed, grows not overnight, but it takes time. And it takes, tenderness and self-compassion and curiosity and all the good stuff that comes in life. Okay. Bye.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.